Happy Tuesday, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Eat, Train, Prosper. Today is Bryan and myself. We're going to cover some updates on us, and then Bryan has a lot of really cool updates to share from a recent training session with a couple of really cool people. But before we get into talking about that, and then one kind of really cool question we have from Instagram as well. Bryan, tell me the latest.
Man, the thing that's the most dominant in my life right now is this emotion of just complete inability to understand the UPS infrastructure and how my pendulum squat machine is not in my house right now. So I ordered this thing like over a month ago, and they said it would arrive in the end of May. So we're obviously past the end of May right now. I followed up with the company, and they shipped it to me. They shipped it to me with a delivery date of Thursday, June 3rd. So I was like, yes, Thursday, June 3rd, that's the day. I set my mind to it. It arrived at the, what do they call them? The
Like the
carrier
processing
facility?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
processing facility or whatever in Denver. It arrived there on Friday, so it was already a day late. And then from there, it's been a nightmare trying to get it. So we scheduled initially the drop off to be Monday, which was yesterday, June 7th. But it didn't make it on the truck. And then today they called me again and said they really can't find it. And so it's not on today's truck either. Today is Tuesday. So my hope is that it comes Wednesday. I don't know. I keep getting DMs from people being like, they probably delivered it to someone else, or like, how'd they lose that big ass thing in the warehouse, or any number of reasons. But honestly, this is the dominant emotion that I'm feeling right now. And yeah, it sucks, man. I want my pendulum squat to arrive, and I want it to arrive before Friday when I leave for Wisconsin for vacation. Because last year I ordered all my equipment, and like 4/5 of my equipment arrived while I was in Wisconsin, and I had to get my dad and my uncle to come and like take the equipment into the garage so it wouldn't get rained on and whatever. And I like literally did everything I could to mitigate that issue this year, and it seems like now the pendulum squat might arrive or not arrive while I'm in Wisconsin. So
Just
who
like
knows?
literally just the exact same scenario as last year.
Yeah.
And
I
then you
know.
have to make that phone call like, hey, Dad, can you go move my 700-pound toy into the garage? Because I'm
Right. So
gone.
yeah, this one's 410 pounds, which is bigger than any of the other ones that I've
Of course it
had.
is,
So
yeah.
yeah, so naturally that would be the situation. So just hoping that gets straightened out. On the diet side of things, I'm 190 pounds, 190.2 this morning. So 3 weeks I spent 3 long weeks stuck in the 193s and 194s. Had like one random day in the 192s, and then it would be right back up to 194 again. So I just like was there, and I just kept talking about it on the podcast. Like if you go back the last 4 weeks and listen to the podcast, it's like still at 193, don't really know what's going on. And then I've literally lost like a pound or a pound and a half each of the last 3 days. So I've gone from like 193.6 to 190 in the last 3 days. So that feels good. I was starting to doubt my ability to manage hunger signaling since I'm not tracking, and I really thought that I had like a good grasp on this. Like in my sense of senses, I know like okay, when I'm eating enough to lose weight, like at this point in a diet, I should be slightly hungry at night, and I should have a little bit of hunger at the end of meals. And I was feeling that. I was feeling subjectively all of the things that I know I'm supposed to be feeling. So it was really kind of irking at me, and I'm like, am I really like that? Have I lost that much touch with myself that I'm actually at maintenance? So it's really cool. It's really cool to see that I was right, that I know my body, and that it is doing what I kind of expected it to do. So we're 6 weeks and 2 days into the diet, and I'm now, as of this morning, down 9.4 pounds or something like that. So that's a pretty solid start to where I want to be. And if I can maintain low 190s throughout the time in Wisconsin, then that'll leave me 10 pounds to go when I get back. So everything's on track.
Yeah, that's really good there. Anything else to add? Training?
No, what you got going on with you, man? I know you're in Utah right now. So how is it? How's the new place?
It's really big. It's kind of silly that it's just Jenny and myself, and we have this like 3-bedroom townhouse. But it's cool. I have an office on the first floor, which I'm really pumped about because I've been working at like kitchen tables and things like that for a while now. So I'm really excited to finally have like my domain to, obviously record the podcast, work, take client calls and things like that. So I'm really, really excited about that. It's really, it's a different like environment and atmosphere. I've never really been in this kind of area of the country before, and as we were driving up, we drove obviously from Texas. You go through like New Mexico, and then you hit we were in Colorado actually for like an hour or two. The landscapes are just like mind boggling. It almost looks like a different planet, with like the huge red rocks and the cliffs and stuff. So that was really, really cool. The drive was actually not that bad. Me and Jenny were like, hey, we have basically 10 hours that we split up between trip to like into Albuquerque and then from Albuquerque here. So we just switched every 2.5 hours. And that make it really, nice. It was pretty easy because you're only driving like twice per day. Our goal is to get into each spot before it was dark each day, and we completed that. So Salt Lake's really cool. Haven't been able to get out and do too much because I've just started a new intake of clients, and that's actually today, the first call. So a lot of work stuff, but hopefully later this week into this weekend we can get outside a little bit. It's really cool seeing the mountains from like the windows, just these huge mountains like right, I guess that would be east of Salt Lake and stuff, but it's like right there, which is just really cool because I've never spent that much time, somewhere like these kind of landscapes. So like the sites are still really new and cool for me.
How different is it than being in Denver as far as like the landscape?
I mean, it's similar. It's a lot more green here than in like Denver, in those kind of surrounding areas from what we've seen so far. And maybe not as much for you because you're in like Boulder, but the mountains are like just appear, and I think they actually are so much closer and larger. I think again that's proximity because in Denver you're still like a solid how far from that like mountain range to the
probably like 2 hours or so.
Yeah, so here I think it's literally like 30 minutes.
Yeah, I mean you're 30 minutes from Park City, which is like right on the slopes.
Exactly. Yeah. So we're pretty close there, which is just really, really cool. It's hot though. It's like it's in the 90s each day, but it's like a dry hot. So there's no humidity. It's been cool. It's been really, really cool so far. The one thing that's really wild is it's still light out at 9 p.m. at night.
Yeah, we have that too. It's
I
nuts.
do not like that. Because you have to, and the real reason I don't like it is I have to really stay on myself or I'll be working still. And then I'll be like, oh shit, I need to eat again or whatever. And it's just like, I want to be in bed by 10. I want to be like reading by like 9:30 and, going to sleep at like 10. And when the sun's still out at 9, like unless you're consciously like paying attention to the time, like it'll throw you off because you'll think it's like 7:30, but it's 9. Right. So that is a little bit trippy. I have capitalized on basically the shifting of my diurnal rhythm. So I'm up at like 5:45, 6 in the morning right now because it feels about 7, like when I was in Texas. So I really, really do like that. I'm going to really do my due diligence to maintain that. I'm just a morning person, right? If I can take my 8 hours and go from like 9:30 whatever to like 5:45, 6 as opposed to sleeping in more, I'm always going to take that because I just generally enjoy the mornings. I'd rather go to bed earlier, wake up earlier, as opposed to the opposite. And again, as someone who's one of my big goals here that I'm sure we'll cover in future podcasts is I really want to become like an efficient quality sleeper during my time here. That is going to shift into like a priority position for my personal goals. So that is something I'm like little by little. I'm on my day 2, no coffee. I have my green tea here and really trying to like ball out on sleep and then see how that will impact my other areas of my life, work, productivity, mental acuity, training, right? Making my fat loss and maintaining fat loss easier because my recovery is better. I'm sleeping more. So that is like my main goal of the summer for my, kind of personal growth is to really become a baller sleeper.
That's awesome. I'm super supportive of that because, as we've talked about, I pretty much have woken up twice a night for the last 20 years. But two things. I think one, you're ready for kids because you're a morning person. So you're already a leg up there. You're good to go. 5:45 is just what you need in life. And then second, how has it been with no coffee? How much caffeine were you consuming prior, and how has it been the last 2 days without it?
Yeah, so it's not like my coffee consumption was really, really bad. It was just high for me personally. And what's funny, is when I put that up on my Instagram story, people would like, I got some people messaging me and they're like, "Oh, I'm doing 400 to 500 milligrams of caffeine per day." And I was like, "Whoa." Like I would do, because I'm using like a smaller type. I mean, this one obviously is a new mug, but it's not like a massive mug, right? This is probably like a 12-ounce mug I would do, and I never fill it up the whole way because I like it when it's hot. So I would probably do maybe 12-ish, maybe 16 ounces in the morning, around 8, 9 a.m. And then sometimes I would do another run right around like noonish. And that one wouldn't be a full one. That one would probably be at like 6 to 8 ounces. And then on the some rare occasion, maybe we'd get like a bang, before training or something. And I would never drink a whole one. Like me and Jenny would split it, or I'd drink half, 3/4 of it, put the other one in the fridge. So I think on my high days, maybe up around 300 milligrams. But here's the thing. It stopped producing that effect of like really quality, high energy, like really motivating training sessions type thing. So like that, I wouldn't get that kind of subjective ergogenic benefit of the caffeine. But then at night, I wouldn't be tired. So I wouldn't get like much benefit, but I would get the negative aspect of the caffeine. And that's the real reason I was like, because this goal of sleeping is, really, really important to me. I'm like, okay, well, I need to kind of tailor this back. So that is kind of that first goal with the caffeine. And then what was the second question was
How is it feeling? Yeah.
Yesterday got really rough around like 1 p.m. I went up to like eat my third meal actually, and it just hit me, and I had to like lay on the couch for like 15 minutes and take a little nap. And I'm not a napper. Like it's just very, very difficult for me. I'll just lay there and not really fall asleep. Coming back to, my problems with sleeping really, really well. And yesterday it just hit me. So it's 10:30 here. I've had 2 green teas here today, this morning. I'll probably have a decaf one later in the afternoon. I really just like green tea too, which is nice. But I do feel better today than yesterday. But yeah, that first day I was like, holy shit, this is real. Like I am exhausted like midday. And it's not like I trained or anything yesterday, which we'll talk about here in a little bit.
Yeah. So there's like 35 milligrams or something of caffeine in each green tea.
I think so, yeah. When I looked it up, because someone was asking me yesterday, and I was like, I want to say it's like a third of what coffee is, like more or less, is like the average. Yeah.
So I think that we've discussed this, but you need like 500 or 600 milligrams to get the ergogenic effect. So you having 300, like I don't know that you would even expect that. I feel like the lower doses are like even 300 would be, I think, considered a lower dose for someone our size. I think that's just more for like, mental focus and whatever.
Exactly.
Or at least that's the way I feel it.
I 100% agree with that. And yeah, for that's what I meant really, like the mental focus, or just like feeling like high energy and sharp, not even from like a performance, like an objective performance benefit. Because even, let's say I do get that objective performance benefit, I am not sleeping at night. And then it works for that first day, and then after it, you're shooting yourself in the foot because you can't.
Well, it's a catch-22, right? I mean, yeah, I experienced this like back in the day. When we first started the gym, I was taking Adderall, right? And it was like I would take the Adderall, and then I wouldn't sleep at night. So then I'd need to take Adderall the next day, and I wouldn't sleep at night, and it just created
Vicious
this
cycle.
like domino effect, a vicious cycle. Yeah. So anyway, that's all super interesting. And then I was going to ask you whether you've trained yet in the new location, but I don't think you have.
I have
right?
not had a real gym session since last Monday.
So 8 days so far.
Yeah. I had like I wanted to squeeze one in on Wednesday because I knew obviously we were moving and everything, and just it ended up like being like a half-ass session. It was in the evening. I really just got it in because I wanted some movement, but I wouldn't by any means call it a productive training session. It was really going through the motions and getting a little sweaty. But yeah, I have not been to the gym in now 8 days. I'm going to go today.
Wow.
And it kind of just happens, with obviously we had basically 3 days on the road driving. Then we got here, and again, this is at altitude, so the altitude kind of kicks your ass a little bit, and then it's super dry, so I'm just feeling like super dehydrated. I'm just like sucking down water and salt and stuff.
No coffee.
No coffee. And I'm like, I just need to give myself a few days to let my body like kind of return to homeostasis before trying to like put in like a volume training session or something like that, because I'm just going to dig the hole a little bit deeper. And I feel I'm almost like kind of proud of that, because, you know, years ago, Aaron would be like, I don't care if it's a shitty training session. I need to go because I'm going to like lose my gains. You know, I need to go just, if it's 30 minutes and I just grab some stuff and do it, I'm checking that box, you know, type of deal. And I know now that like I'm not losing anything in 8 days. My nutrition's still pretty tight. I'm getting out and walking. I'm focusing on like sleep again, allowing my body to return to homeostasis. And I just know now, and that happens almost every time we move. You know, I spend 4 to 7, 8 days away from the gym as I'm just resetting up life again, and it hasn't really been a detriment really at all. And it's just serves as like a kind of an unplanned, I guess, deload.
It'll give you more runway to use going forward. So I think ultimately that's awesome. Cool. Well, I'm about to train 3 straight days in a row, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, because we're driving to Wisco on Friday. So we're going to go 2 days this time. We're going to spend the night in Lincoln, Nebraska, and then split it up into 2 like 8-hour segments instead of 1 16-hour segment. So probably won't train for a few days.
Is that how far the drive is? Like 16 hours from where you are?
It's 16 with stops. I think that Google Maps says it's like 14, but then, you know, you gain time because you actually go faster than the speed limit. So it's really like 13, but then you have 2 kids, so you stop a bunch of times. And I think last year it ended up taking 16 total.
Yeah, well, as we were coming up through like parts of like southern Utah, the speed limit was 80.
Yeah, I know.
And I was like, I don't even know if I want to do that.
Well, that means you can go 90 something, right?
Yeah. And I'm like, if I'm going 90, I'm going to have to be like paying super like hard attention. And I can't be just like off looking at, you know, everything going on. I was like, I'm just going to stick to around that 75, you know, 77.
Just sit in the right lane and just look at stuff. Yeah. No, totally.
Yeah, it's wild.
Cool.
What? Sorry, go ahead. I was going to say, do you want to get into what happened with this past Friday?
Yeah, totally. So most of people listening to the podcast probably also follow my story. But I had a really awesome, rad opportunity to go train up with Kassem Hanson from N1. We talk about them a lot on here. And then Brian Minor, who was the guy that coached me, and Alberto Núñez, Berto from 3DMJ. We all met up at the gym at Prospect, the little gym that we talk about on the podcast that you walked by when you lived around here.
Yeah.
And we raged. We went super ham on some legs, and it was really cool. Like, we just hung out for like 2.5 or 3 hours, and I'll take you guys all through kind of exactly what we did here and kind of some of the thought behind it. But ultimately, it was just really cool. Like, I just tried to be mostly a fly on the wall and just kind of like absorb what I could and listen to them as they talked about theoretical models of mechanical tension and like all of these different concepts that like I could follow, but I wouldn't really have thought to pose the questions the way that Bryan did. Like, Bryan was really insightful and had some interesting ideas, not to necessarily be combative, but I think it's cool to see people kind of push ideologies, or like, you know, Kassem's view on things, and be like, you know, why is it this way? Why isn't it this way? Like, kind of different things like that. So that was all pretty cool. I got like 25 minutes of recording of listening to Bryan and Kassem talk about this stuff on my phone. But I can't post any of that basically.
Yeah.
I just posted training footage, but it was cool that I have it and I can view it and kind of, I have this information. So, one of the coolest experiences, for me to be able to network as well. Like, even to meet Berto is super rad. I was supposed to actually train with him last year. It fell through. So I have, Megan Graham, who, is an athlete under Berto, or was an athlete under Berto. She and I met up, and Berto was supposed to come meet up with us, but he couldn't make it. So it's cool that a year later we were able to get together and do that. And those guys are all rad. Like one of the first questions Kassem asked when we started was, okay, who's going to be the weak link? Like, who's going to be the weakest one on the hack squat, right? And I was like, probably me. I'm probably going to be the weakest one on the hack squat.
Yeah.
And I was like, maybe if we were training back, I wouldn't be the weakest one. But I think if we're hack squatting, I'm probably the weakest one. So we started with hack squat. It was the new machine that Cass invented.
His prototype.
Have you seen this thing?
I have seen. I saw it on
The
the
transformer
store.
machine or whatever it is. Yeah. So basically, what it does for anyone that doesn't know is it has an adjustable back pad. So you can use it like a standard hack squat where you're like super lean back and you're using like the shoulder pads to push up against. And then that's your like standard hack squat. And then what you can do is you can move the back pad forward. And as you move the back pad forward, it engages more glutes because you're essentially changing your hip angle, right? You're changing the moment arm of your hip. So the idea was that we would start with a top set of 8 to 10 reps in the hack squat because the hack squat is more quad and less glute because it disadvantages the glutes based on the hip angle. So we kind of worked up in weight, and I ended up hitting, I want to say, 4 plates per side for 10. And then Berto went and did 4 plates per side for, I think, 10 as well. And then Bryan went and did 5 plates per side and got, I think, like 8. So Bryan was definitely stronger, and then Cass did it and also got like 8 with 5 plates.
Wow.
Maybe even 5.5. Cass might have even put an extra quarter on there. I think Cass went 5.5 plates per side. But he got like 7. And that was pretty savage. But I also found out that he weighs like 240.
That helps.
So
it definitely helps.
It definitely helps. Yeah. And then he asked us if we wanted to alternate the hack squat with seated leg curls with the Prime leg curl machine, the one where the pad is over the shins. And it's still weird. Like, I'm still not sure if I like super dig it. Bryan and I both talked about this, and we both kind of agreed that the weird thing about it is that it doesn't allow you to actually get to full lengthened position at the top. So Cass was saying like it doesn't matter because it's not like a lengthened overload movement. It's a shortened position overload movement. But Bryan and I both felt weird because you would get to like if this is the full extension of the hamstring in a seated leg curl machine, right there, then you would get to about right here and the bar would stop you so that you couldn't go. For anyone that's not watching on YouTube, it was basically maybe 2 or 3 inches from allowing you to get that like stretch position at the top of your seated leg curl. So the machine would just stop and then you would have to go again from that dead stop, which we've talked about has its advantages too. But it just felt weird because I'm used to leg curl machine where I do get that stretch position at the top. So even with the lean forward and the like pre-stretch of the hamstring, we just still couldn't get there.
I would agree with you in that. I want to be able to work through a full range of motion is really what that comes down to. And it feels weird when because you're starting and stopping at like a 80%, of what your normal movement is. I would agree with that.
Yeah. So it took a little getting used to. Cass is the way he approaches work on these kind of prime machines is that when you're doing your warm-up sets, he likes the overload to be in the shortened position because it's much less damaging. So we set the cam thing to shorten position overload, which means that it gets harder at the position where your heels are closest to your butt. And so we did some light sets there, and then as we kind of went into maybe our last warm-up set, we moved it to mid-range overload, so it was kind of just like equal through the range more or less. And then when we went to the work set, we went to a partially lengthened overload. So the top of the movement was going to be harder than the bottom. So you have to work really, really hard to get it going. But once you get it going, you can pretty much get it to the contracted position. So I did one top set there, and then I had one top set on the hack squat. Then we moved the seat forward in the hack squat so that it kind of prones the chest forward, like I mentioned. And honestly, it felt very akin to the leg sled that I have at home in my basement.
That was my thought.
Like it literally almost, yeah, I mean, it was almost the exact same thing. So that was cool. So the idea was that you keep the same weight that you did in the last set, because you put your body in a more advantageous position. No, you add weight. He had me add weight on this one because it puts your body in a more advantageous position. So he put 5 plates on each side for me, and I got 8 reps. And that set was brutal. I wish someone would have recorded it. They only recorded the first set that I did of the hack, but that second set where I was prone forward with 5 plates, that one ripped me up really good. Like my glutes were like vibrating at the end of the set. So then we went back over to the leg curl, and this time we did a cast set. Did you follow when I wrote out what those cast sets were on my story? So for anyone that doesn't know, a cast set is essentially a 3-part set where each section receives 6 to 8 reps. So the first 6 to 8 reps are done with a shortened position overload. So it's going to be hardest when your heels are closest to your butt, and you do a 2-second pause at that same position. So 6 to 8 reps like that. Then there's a quick cam change where the overload goes to the lengthened position, and you do 6 to 8 reps where there's no pausing. So you just keep that like constant tension on the hamstring. Then you take it back to the same position you were in the beginning with the shortened position overload, and you still try to do a 2-second pause, but you understand that none of those reps, not a single one, is going to be a full range of motion rep. So you're basically just trying to get your heels as close to your butt as you can and then pause for 2 seconds and do that for 6 to 8 reps. And then by the end of that, you literally just can't move. Like you've completely exhausted the muscle through the shortened position, the lengthened position, and then the shortened position with partials. So that was an extremely effective hamstring set, and basically the only hamstring work we did the entire day was the one top set of the leg curl and then this cast set of leg curl, and I ended up with sore hamstrings the next day, so that was pretty cool. And then so at this, go ahead.
What I was going to say is what's really wild, or not even wild, what's really interesting and progressive is just those prime machines and how, I mean, whoever built them, right? I mean, super mega props to them because they took like a deeper understanding of the mechanics and like, hey, if we can do these things, we can basically make these machines more effective by allowing people who want to learn and dig deeper to, select, where the cam position is and stuff. And really just, you can take one movement and you can now create a few different pathways from it for overload and stuff. So it's just taking this pretty much the same equipment, making it more versatile for the end users.
Yeah, totally. I posed a question to Cass because I was interesting. I find it very interesting with the use of lengthened position overload movements and short range overload movements in training programming, and how it matters, And so I didn't ask this specific question, but this is one that I'm very interested in, and I don't know if there's like even an answer that can be given or if it's always like an it depends answer. But like if you're doing a lengthened position overload bicep movement, like an incline dumbbell bicep curl versus doing like a cable preacher curl. So cable preacher curl is going to be significantly less damaging as it's in the shortened position. Like how much more volume per unit of recovery, I guess, could we expect to be able to do with this like preacher cable curl versus this like very damaging stretch position incline dumbbell curl? And I think that the same can be extrapolated out to any movement. Like how many more leg curl sets could you do than RDL sets, or how many more leg curl sets in the shortened position could you do than leg curl sets in the lengthened position? So I think these are like all really interesting questions to think about, and I don't know what the answer is, but I do think it's relevant. So then the thing that Cass was talking about, and he put this on his profile maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, but he did a bicep curl example, and he showed how depending on where the overload is placed, whether it's shortened position, mid-range, or lengthened position, that it changes how you reach failure. And basically the idea would be that, and you can think about this conceptually, is that like if you're doing, let's use a leg extension because I think that's the most applicable example to think about the shortened range. But if you're failing at the point where you can't extend your leg fully at the top anymore, you still have a ton of extra energy that you can put into the bottom range of movement. Like you could probably still do a ton more reps at that bottom range. So you've left them unexhausted essentially. Alternatively, you can also set a leg extension so that it overloads the bottom position instead of the top position. So you have to work really, really, really hard to get the leg extension going. But once you get it through that bottom position, it then is super easy to get it to the top. But in that one, when you fail, you failed. Like if you can't get it going, you're just done. But now the top range hasn't been exhausted, because the top range is just like, oh, I could still work. You just aren't strong enough to actually get the machine there. So I think that what he does with using these shortened overload movements and then using partials to work your way down into the muscle fiber spectrum is probably the most efficient way to exhaust all the muscle fibers in one go, if that's your goal. I mean, obviously, you know, if your goal is to do 4 sets, you're not going to do that. But if your goal is to go in there and just get the most you possibly can out of one set, then I think doing something like that is great. And he actually said that in the absence of having prime machines, that the closest you can really get to that is to pick these shortened range overload movements and then just do partials until you're basically moving only like a quarter of a rep. And then you've essentially exhausted all the muscle fibers as well. So I think practically, as something to like apply to training, it's really cool. And I've been using it for anyone that follows my stories on movements like lat pull downs, basically any movement that fails in the shortened position first, which is most pulling movements. Yeah. Most pulling movements, yeah.
Triceps potentially also.
I have some biceps. I mean, again, it depends on elbow angle in relation to body. Like an incline curl or a standing curl, no. But any movement where the elbows are in front of the body, then they would fail in the shortened position first. I guess you could still fail in the shortened position on an incline dumbbell curl too. But I don't know that would happen if you weren't using momentum to get through the lengthened position. You know what I mean?
I would agree with that, yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, I've been using it and I really like it. I find that 3 partials is the right number for me. It doesn't quite get me to a quarter rep. It usually gets me to about half a rep, but I don't know that I need to take it all the way to the point where I'm only doing like a quarter rep. I think 3 partials where I go from like 3/4 rep to like 3/5 rep to like half rep or something like that. Is perfect, and I feel like I get a really good stimulus from that without it like completely crushing my CNS or anything like that. So, so that was super effective. One thing that I've been taken from it and kind of implemented into my training as well.
Yeah, I think that's something that, as have a new gym here and I'm kind of like restarting with, because one of the downsides to my lifestyle is like, okay, now I have a brand new leg extension machine. I have no idea what this weight's going to be compared to the last weight. So I basically just like wipe my numbers and start over, right? Find like a challenging starting position and go from there. And that's definitely something I'm going to incorporate on those like, movements that are overloaded in the shortened position, like a leg extension, rows, pull downs, or whatever, getting a little bit of partials, just because I'm going to take like a volume approach here. The one thing I wanted to say is I feel like everything that we just talked about with like this overloading shortened positions versus overloading lengthened positions and everything, like it's really opening a can of worms. And what's really wild is it kind of throws a wrench into a lot of, I shouldn't say it necessarily throws a wrench, it potentially throws a wrench into a lot of the research that we have, because we're not necessarily comparing like a 1-to-1. We might be using a leg extent, because like you've like used different leg extension machines. Some are like, I was using this one, oh my goodness, at the gym, and it's I think it's Hoist is the company, and it like moves. It moves your positioning.
The seat raises.
Yeah. And like you don't know if the leg extension machine that is used in this study is like a fixed one of these ones that moves, what the angles are like. So there is just like, again, like everything we talked about, it's incredibly nuanced, and this just opens up like multiple more dimensions of things to be explored. Hopefully people do it.
Yeah, kind of on that same point, I heard Greg Nuckols talk about at one point, I think it was actually on that Jeff Nippard podcast that I sent to you, where he was talking about how like, when they were talking about how hard you should train, and his ultimate statement was that you should probably go to failure on isolation movements, and maybe you can leave like a rep or 2 in the tank on compounds or whatever. But his rationalization was like, every study that's done testing failure or whatever is always on isolation movements. Like they always are using like curls and leg extensions and stuff like that. And then any stuff where they're testing like advanced athletes or trained people, they're usually using compound movements and they're not necessarily pushing everything to failure. And so he was like, then those studies show that leaving RIR in the tank is better or just as good or whatever. And so he was like, maybe the real answer is just like, if it's a low fatiguing movement, go smash it. And if it's a really debilitating high fatigue movement, leave some reps in the tank. And like, that's probably a pretty good bet. So I think if you think about it like that, and you, again, to your point about the studies being certain ways, like it makes sense.
I would like heavily personally agree with that statement. And in terms from like a safety profile too, there's probably a reason why they're not taking like, 18-year-old university students who have 6 months of training and they're like, okay, we're going to take your back squats to, to absolute failure.
Right. But leg extensions, you can take a noob to failure on leg extensions and like, it's just, can you extend your knee or not?
Yeah. Your risk is significantly lower there too.
Yeah. Cool. Well, so just real quick, I'll run through the last two exercises of the workout.
Yeah.
But we did the hip press, which is kind of like a leg press machine, but it runs on a pendulum. So instead of like a sled that goes up and down, it's a pendulum movement. So it's actually like, it can be quad and glute, or it can be primarily glute, depending on foot placement and kind of what you do with range of motion. So we were trying to use it primarily for glute, but I think that I've kind of ingrained in myself such like a quad focus over the last couple of years that I like couldn't get away from at least using my quad some. And I felt like a very even balance between quad and glute on it. So we did 2 sets on there. And again, Bryan and Cass used more weight and me and Berto used the same weight and got similar reps on stuff. And then the final thing we did was we went and do a leg extension and we did one of those cast sets. So the same thing that I mentioned with the leg curl with the 6 to 8 reps and the 3 positions with the pauses and all that. And we did leg extension and that was just awful. I mean, it was so bad. I posted the whole minute 30 video of my set on there. And man, it was just like my legs were just like not functioning afterwards. After you take a leg extension to the point that you can't even do a quarter rep, it's just awful.
I watched that on your story, and what I thought was most funny were like the noises you were making.
Like I just you're 20 reps into a failure set of leg extension with partials. Like I don't what are you supposed to do?
You don't like, you just hold on and close your eyes and wait for it to be over.
The funniest part of the whole thing is that I literally never get sore biceps from training biceps. And my biceps were so sore for 2 or 3 days after that set of leg extensions from like gripping the handles so aggressively that like I skipped my bicep workout 2 days ago and I went to do back today and I still felt my biceps a little bit as I was doing back. So they were more sore from 1 set of leg extensions than from like 8 sets of bicep curls.
That's really funny.
Yeah. What are you going to do, man? I guess I just need to do more ham leg extensions and I'll get yoked biceps.
Yeah, I think it's really, what's super cool about it is it's like not on paper like a ton of volume, especially for like the quad, right, with that leg extension, but it's so like precise and it's such like a high effort set, and it's so challenging that it's really, really interesting because it kind of muddies the water around some of like the volume versus I don't want to use the word intensity because it's not, on textbook intensity and just like a relative of your 1 rep max, but just like effort, like absolute effort. And it's really, really interesting because there's limited, to my knowledge at least, there's limited like quality research on this stuff. It's like a new kind of expanding area of different things, and I'm super excited about it, right? I feel like it's just super cool to see, like, after all these years of us like lifting and stuff, there's just like this new kind of fire stuff coming in, and it's just, I don't know, it really, really excites me, I guess is what I want to say.
No, for sure. It excites me too. And I feel like such a dork saying it, but what, like the study that I really want to see done, like for real, is I want them to match effective reps. So if we assume that the last 5 reps of a set to failure are the effective reps or whatever, I want to see a study where, like we talked about on 1 or 2 podcasts ago, where like one group is leaving 2 to 3 RIR on every set, but they're doing 25 effective reps per muscle group, and then this other group is going to failure or whatever, doing cluster sets and stuff like that, and they're also accumulating 25 effective reps, but they're doing it with significantly less sets. Because if you're going to failure on each set, you only need 5 sets versus leaving 2 to 3 reps in the tank, you might need 15 sets or 12 sets or whatever it is to get the same number of effective reps. And I think my intuition is that it's probably going to be pretty split, and you're going to see some people that respond better to high volume and some people that respond better to high intensity, and that it's going to, as we always see, just come down to individualization and finding a program that fits you best. But I think that study would still be super rad to see, and I would love to hear all of the people that I respect kind of break it down and talk about it and all the nuance of it. Because even when we look at what the workout I did with Cass, like I got 5 effective reps on each set of hack squat, so that's 10. Well, actually, maybe I left 1 RIR, so on one of the sets. So maybe I got 9 effective reps. Then I did the leg extension set, and I got 12 to 15 effective reps on that one leg extension set. So I'm at 25-ish, 20 to 25 effective reps for quads. And then we did the leg curl top set, it's 5 effective reps, and then the cast set, which is 12 to 15. So, I did the right dose of effective reps. I just didn't do that many total sets.
Exactly. One thing that you said that kind of sparked an idea I had in my head that I thought would be cool to bring up. I've had this idea that some of the limitations or hard things with research is obviously funding, right? Getting someone to fund it, getting quality subjects who are going to adhere to it. Like a lot of it's done on university undergrads or research assistants and stuff. And I had this idea, I was like, it would be cool. Like I personally would spend money out of my own pocket to help fund, research studies that I cared about in training and stuff like that. And I thought it'd be cool because I'm sure there are people like yourself and others, if there was kind of this distributed thing where you could sign up to crowdsource research studies or volunteer to be a part of research studies, because I want studies that are on people like me who've been training for 15 years, who have their nutrition and shit tight and different things. And I thought it would be this cool idea is so if anyone out there is listening who wants to run with this, by all means, you have someone who will help you, from funding, but crowdsource research studies that you'd like to be a part of or something like that. At the end of the day, I just want the knowledge, right? And I thought it would be just a kind of a cool idea.
I love the crowdsourcing idea. I actually think that's genius, and somebody really should. I wish we had a bigger listenership so that somebody who knows people would just make this thing happen. But I think the issue with getting people that are 15 years trained into studies is that nobody that's close to their genetic potential wants to hand over their training for 3 months to some science lab. What if you're in the okay, so there's a study that's one group's going to squat for 3 months and the other group's going to do leg extensions for 3 months. And you're like, fuck, what am I going to do? I mean, that's an extreme example, but that could happen, right? You just have to hope that, or one study is we're going to overfeed protein or give you 1 gram per pound of body weight, or we're going to give you the RDA recommended. If you sign up for that study, you're going to hate life if you're in the low group.
Well, I think again, it comes back to who's designing the study. And here's the thing, if we crowdfunded it or whatever, let's say we got someone like Cass to write the training programs or something like that. It's just the inputs, right? And I think if you could just elevate everything and, hey, we're going to take really trained natural athletes. We're going to have a realistic training program, with controlling volume and intensities or certain things like that. That's kind of what I'm talking about. Because so much of what we have is just so basic and God, and I don't want to kind of approach it to be a dick, but a lot of it's just unrealistic, or so simple that I just don't know.
It's not applicable.
It's not applicable to us. Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was searching for. But yeah, I mean, cool potential idea for anyone in the future. Do you want to kind of pivot to this question we have?
Yeah, totally. I like it.
Okay, so kind of want to frame this question up for all you guys listening. It is basically around for anyone who wants to kind of maybe, because everything that Bryan and I usually talk about so much is for like hypertrophy specific type of training, and we talk a little bit about strength training too, in pursuit of like a physique, how fat loss applies to that, etc. So the question coming in is basically anyone who wants to lean into doing more cardio because they enjoy it and have fun with it. How do we kind of balance that with like movement that may not be ideal for certain goals of fat loss or in the attainment of an improved physique, but kind of balancing that, like the best type of training is the training that you enjoy, and where do we kind of find that falls in between with recommendations for hypertrophy training versus like maybe if you just want to like play a lot more basketball, or maybe you're someone who actually does enjoy running and doing that. So just kind of kickstarting that conversation. Bryan, do you want to start with your thoughts on it?
Yeah, totally. I think that the first thing to point out beyond everything else is that the bottom of the pyramid of importance, the most important thing is adherence. You have to adhere to your program, right? If you have a program that every single day you have to fight tooth and nail to get yourself motivated to do that program, then you're not going to adhere to it long term. You might be able to fight through and adhere to it for 6 months or a year or 2 years or 3 years, but eventually it's going to burn out and it's probably not going to be effective for you because you don't enjoy it. I kind of analogize it to dieting. Like you can force yourself to get through a diet and really put your all into it, but it's a fight every day. Like you have to every day wake up and be like, I understand that I'm going to be a little bit hungry. So that's just not sustainable for the long term. If you're going to sustain a way of eating, then it has to be something that you can see yourself doing 3, 5, 10 years from now. So the same applies to training. So with that as like the background statement, right? If you come to me and you tell me, my goal is hypertrophy, I want to have the biggest muscles in the world, and I don't care about anything else, then I'm not going to have you go join a basketball league 3 days a week or go run on the side or go take ski trips with your bros and drink beer on the weekends. Like, those are not the things that you get to do when you've stated that your goal is 100% to do hypertrophy. But you can get 95%, I would say. I'd pretty confidently say that you can get 90 to 95% of the benefit or physique that you would ever get with concurrent training, using hypertrophy training with some form of cardiovascular training that you enjoy. That could be playing basketball 2 to 3 days a week. It could be going for runs 2 to 3 days a week. It could be doing a CrossFit class every now and then. I think that it begins to cause issues and affect my 90 to 95% confidence number when the activity that you're doing starts to exceed maybe 2 to 3 times a week of 30 to 60 minutes of work or something like that. Like when you start talking about training for a half marathon or a marathon, or you start wanting to do a triathlon, or any of those other like extremely aerobic endeavors that require not just for you to run or do activity for 10 hours at a time, but there's all the training that goes into preparing to do 10 hours of work. And so I think that then begins to create this like cascade of issues. So hypertrophy and triathloning are not things that can be combined together very effectively. But I really don't see a whole ton of reason that you can't play sports, do cardiovascular activity, and do hypertrophy training. I have some thoughts as well on the precise structuring of that. So if you want to drop in with any of your thoughts, and then you can send it back to me.
Yeah, I mean, you covered everything really, really well. The one thing I do want to add is there is optimality and practicality, and oftentimes people confuse those. So, what might be optimal from a physique standpoint may not be practical with your ultimate kind of desires and what you want to spend your time doing. I agree with what you said. Like, if you want to play basketball a couple times per week, like that's really, it's just keeping your body like in in movement, right? That's not what are the planes like? What's the problem with like we never move in a sagittal plane? Is that what it is?
Lateral. I always just
Okay,
go
lateral.
lateral.
Yeah.
Yeah, sagittal works too.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because all we do is like kind of lift weights and then maybe walk and things like that. And I think for a lot of people it can fit in there. And why I think the question came to me and kind of the approach is I will get clients a lot who are like, well, I think I'm going to start running. And like the first thing I start doing is peel the layers off. I'm like, why do you want to start running? Because I would say 7 to 8 out of 10 times people think it's going to help them with their fat loss. Not because they
Or their
or their
fitness or their
or their
cardiovascular
fitness. I'm like, if you
fitness.
really want to improve your fitness and help fat loss, we're going to do hill sprints once per week. You know what I mean? Like that, and we're going to hit it hard and short and go home type of thing. But going on like a 40-minute jog, what's going to happen with most people is they're going to end up with some like knee problems or something like that because they're going to scale it up way too fast. They don't want to be doing it in the first place. And the true fat loss benefits aren't going to be much higher than if we just slightly adjusted calories or macronutrient profiles and walked or something instead. So that's what I first do is pull it back. And then the few people who do actually enjoy running and they like get that runner's high, or they like the extra time spent out in nature or whatever, or they want to go like trail running, I'm like, perfect. Let's do that. And we're going to adjust training. Maybe we go down to 4 days per week and we include this with a certain day and then we feed, purposely for it. But really is the what is the true purpose behind the extra activity? Is it because you enjoy that activity, or is it because you have some thought tied that it's going to like accelerate your fat loss or something like that? And that's the real reason I want to kind of pull back and understand from when that question does come to me.
Yeah, when I said fitness, I think what I meant was the overriding vision of health. And so that kind of takes into account like cardiovascular health, like the heart and the lungs and the blood system and all that stuff. And so there've been many studies now that have shown that weight training is just as good or even better than cardio. They've compared a just weight training group to a just cardio group and had a weight training and cardio group, and the groups with weight training did as good or better than the groups with the cardio. So for general like heart health and longevity, lifting weights with high effort is going to be just as good. When it comes to like straight up getting better at a specific skill, like, I want to be able to run 30 minutes, then yeah, you peel back the layers and you're like, why do you want to be able to run 30 minutes? And if it's literally just like, well, it's something that's important to me, like I want to be able to run 8-minute miles for 30 minutes or whatever it is, then that's, a physical challenge that they want to take on, and that's fine. Just the same way that I take on like pendulum squatting or whatever, if my machine ever arrives. So, but anyway, I think that ultimately the key is figuring out how to organize it so that it all works as close to optimally as possible. And the thing with most cardiovascular pursuits is that they tend to be lower body dominant. I think swimming would be the one that is not. So you would just flip flop everything I'm saying if you're swimming. But
swimming is body dominant.
Yeah. But essentially the goal would be to put your cardiovascular training or your sport or whatever it is at least 24 hours away from your leg days. So the way that might look with my programming, since I pretty much program lower upper rest, rest, is that you would go lower then upper in the morning on Tuesday, and then you would do your cardio or your basketball or whatever it is Tuesday night, and then you would have Wednesday off, and then you would have lower again on Thursday, and then you would have upper on Friday morning, and then you would do your cardio on Friday night or Saturday or whatever, and then you'd have Sunday as a rest day. So I think in a perfect world that allows you 2 days a week of your chosen activity, and it really, I would say, has negligible effects on your training. I don't think it would be any different than going out for 15,000 steps of walking or something like that. So that would be my thought. I think you can fit 2 days a week in without really even having to do anything different except from paying attention to frequency of training in relation to leg day. When you start doing it more than 2 days a week and it starts becoming longer than 30 to 60 minutes, then now I think you have some other issues that you might need to work around. But following that general model that I laid out, I think would work pretty well. What do you think?
I honestly have nothing else to add to that. I agree. I think that 4 4 and 2 is probably the holy grail for, most people who wanna work on both or whatever. And I think how you laid that out is literally perfect.
Yeah, because then they still get 2 rest days in. I think you still get a Sunday and a Wednesday rest day. You get 4 training days. One of the training days has a cardio day on it, and the other cardio day is on like a Saturday. So yeah, that's how I usually lay it out for people, and it's worked pretty well. So if anyone has any other thoughts or ideas, drop them in the comments or send us a DM. I'd be curious to hear how you kind of lay it out.
Yeah, there are times, and I will say this: there are times where I had done both on a day, and what it would be like a training day and then mountain biking, and it would crush me. I would have to eat a full extra meal, and that was just from like a pure hunger standpoint. And then I would just be like drained at the end of the day. So it was really wild. And I would always do my damnedest to pair it up on like a back day or a push session. There was like 1 or 2 times where I just didn't plan correctly, and it was on a leg day, and I was worthless on those days. But even on those days, like it is a lot to do on a day. I mean, obviously mountain biking is kind of intense too, but it would always be right around that, like, 50, 60 minutes. But yeah, you may need to eat a little bit more too on that day.
Yep.
I don't even want to use the word may. You should probably eat more on that day, and make sure, however your timing does, you want to get adequate nutrition in between the 2 sessions, 100%.
Totally agree with all that.
Cool. Anything else for this episode, Brian?
No, I guess we should let everyone know that we're going to take a 2 week break.
Yep. So, I mean, obviously, Brian said you start vacation later in a couple days, right?
Friday we leave, yeah.
Friday. Awesome. So what we're going to plan to do, guys, take a 2 week hiatus from the podcast, let Brian enjoy his 2 weeks in Wisconsin with his family. I'm a big fan of, boundaries and taking time away. So I definitely want to make sure we extend that to you so you can get that good family time in, relax in, come back refreshed.
And hopefully I have good news on my pendulum squat.
I would hope by in 2 weeks when we come back, your pendulum squat has landed. I will only hope for that to happen.
All right, guys. Well, thanks, and we'll catch you in a couple weeks.
Sounds good. Later, guys.